Today is National Equal Pay Day, a symbolic one designed to point out that on average, a woman would have to work until today to earn the same amount of money as her male counterpart earned last year alone. Seem fair? According to the most recent data, white women in this country earn about 77% as much as white men, and for many women of color, it's even worse. Black women earn 61%, Hispanic women 53%. And the numbers are no better in Greater Boston, where women make an average of 76 cents to a man's dollar. Last year, state lawmakers passed an updated version of the Massachusetts Equal Pay Act, which prohibits employers from asking applicants about their salary history, makes it illegal to ban employees from discussing compensation, and requires equal pay for comparable work. One thing it didn't address was a key cause of the pay gap: poor representation in leadership positions. This year, Mayor Marty Walsh and state lawmakers are proposing a law that they say would. It's called the Massachusetts Pay Transparency and Pipeline Advancement Act. Joining me are the Executive Director for Walsh's Office of Women's Advancement, Tania Del Rio. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Along with Boston City Councilor Lydia. Welcome back. It's good to see you. How are we doing on the equal pay front in Massachusetts, would you say?
Yeah, we are gearing up this year to come out with the updated figures for the ones that you just read out, and we hope to see progress. Progress has been slow, we got to say, so we see this law and all the other initiatives that we have going on in our office as steps towards making progress, but it's hard, slow work of changing a culture.
Are we changing the culture? How are we doing in Boston, for example?
I think there are some small changes. I mean, look at the city council. We have almost equity in terms of the women who are able to lead in the city council. And there's certainly changes in the way we're talking to each other and about each other and what we consider good jobs and benefits. A lactation room, for example, is something that's part of our conversations, looking at paid family leave. All different kinds of things are part of the changing culture, which I think are really good things.
But there was a lot of celebration last year by the mayor and others, I should say, about this reporting from corporations about a lot of their data, but it's voluntary. And, you know, my sense is that when you ask for voluntary compliance with something, those who have good stories to tell voluntarily comply, and those who don't have good stories to tell don't comply. So don't we need more teeth in some of these well-intended kind of things? Well,
there's two ways to look at it. I mean, you can have those that are complying, and then you can also just look at it in terms of investigations, like we're doing with the Wynn Casino, and actually looking at that and saying whether you complied or not, we're going to find out what happened there. I think we should do more investigating and actually asking the tough questions.
Do you think asking the tough questions, were the tough questions asked or answered in this act to establish pay equity that went into effect last year in the legislature? I've listed some of the component parts of this. While they did mandate comparable pay, that's been mandated by federal and state law for decades. I mean, it inched closer, but it didn't really get us there, did it, or did it?
It inched closer, and it's going to take a lot of bites at the apple to get to equity. We cannot rely on one act in one moment at one time, because we didn't get here through this kind of inequity through just one act in one moment and one time. So it is part of the solution. It's part of the tools in the toolbox. I think making sure that we don't ask about salary history and all of those different kinds of things are helpful.
Can you explain why that part is helpful? People at home may say, well, what's the difference? Why does it help a woman candidate if I can't ask her about her salary history until I've made a job offer, which is what it says?
One of the biggest things you're finding is people judge how they're going to pay somebody based on what you were paid before. And far too many, or in many cases, women are working in social services, working in as teachers, or working in nonprofit organizations. So that they don't pay well in those industries. And so when you're asking her how much you got paid, let's say at a nonprofit, before you're coming into work at city government, which could pay a lot more, she's at a disadvantage because she's worked extremely hard but chose or was in an industry that doesn't pay much, and women disproportionately are working in those industries.
You know,
I'm sorry, also asking employers to make offers that match what they've budgeted for the position and what the position, what the value that the person in that position delivering would be worth, not based on what that person expects, which tends to be a lower expectation for women because of they've been anchored at a lower rate.
And what happens when they don't do it?
What do you mean?
What happens when you say they're asking them to give them what is budgeted for it, not based upon whether it's the gender of the applicant?
Well,
and when they don't do it, there's an absence of
That's why the
teeth.
question is no longer allowed. And what we found is that a lot of companies that have a presence in Massachusetts have now extended this practice to all of their locations.
Can we talk about what it seems to me, I've been harping on this for years. The Boston Club does this really important service every year when they look at the leaders of the 100 biggest corporations corporations in America. The statistics they report a little bit better this year. I think they're appalling. They may be better. There are 8 what they call 0 zeros. 8 of the 100 biggest corporations don't have one single woman on the board or in a C-suite. 11 have all-male boards. 39 have no female executive officers. Does this Pay, Transparency, and Pipeline Advancement Act that Marty Walsh wrote about, how does this address that whole leadership question?
Yeah, so you were earlier talking about all the efforts that companies are doing voluntarily. We feel like that exercise has helped organizations be less scared of being out there and being transparent with their information. So this new bill actually brings that transparency and says transparency is the next step, let's do it. So what it's doing is mandating organizations that have 100 employees or more to tell the public how many men are in your leadership team, how many women, and be transparent about that. Job seekers, especially in the millennial generation, care about that.
And they would have to report it. This is mandated reporting should it become law. But you know, when I was reading Mayor Walsh's thing today with Liz Malia, and I can't remember, my apologies.
Evan Murphy.
Thank you so much. The third person there, they were talking about how it would create an incentive for companies to do the right thing. And I'm nodding in agreement. And then I'm saying to myself, this Boston Club data doesn't cause these big companies to do the right thing. You'd think they'd be humiliated to be listed as a 0-0 or as a company that doesn't think women are competent enough to be in any senior positions, but they don't change. So why will this Transparency Act change things?
I think it has a lot to do with market forces. They care because it's something to be proud about, or it's something to be ashamed about as well. It's now mandated that I'm going to see this company that I'm considering applying for or considering buying products from has not had or does not have a woman in any form of leadership. So it does matter for that company's reputation. Advertising and the product and I guess the name of the company matters just as much.
So you both feel this thing should have become law. We should make clear it's just filed.
Yeah.
This would be a major step forward in terms of the top of the thing.
I also wanted to tell you that in that event where they launched the report you're talking about with women on boards, they mentioned that companies asked to be taken off that list. They said, please don't list me in this no women on boards. At least just don't mention it.
Well, you know how they don't get listed? They do something. 2.5% of the board members are women of color. I mean, the numbers are just staggering.
Right.
Okay, for the end here, I'm going to make you the czar of this issue, or czarina, and you're next. Tell me what change, what one change that's not on the table so far in this discussion that in your estimation could really crack this thing wide open. What would it be?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be there's a lot of activity around keeping women in the pipeline, recruiting them, helping them get to the top. There's not too much yet about how do we make sure women don't leak out of the pipeline. So workplace policies that help keep women in the workforce, like childcare benefits, like paid family leave, like work schedule flexibility policies, that's going to help move the needle as well as this.
Councilor, what would you add to that list?
I would actually just strengthen her list. I mean, we have good policies about building with development and actually building child care facilities. I also think one of the best examples of you can do everything right and recruit and have the most qualified team and then not have astronaut suits that can fit them. So if you want to talk about keeping people in there, but when you actually have them, what all those literally rocket scientists didn't miss that point. So you can miss the mark by just simply not asking them basic questions.
If you don't know what she's talking about, Google spacewalk, and you'll find out in a minute. Councilor, it's great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Tania, good to meet you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.